Okay, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, class, we're going to do chapter 8. Um, Here we go. Safety management. How many of you are currently CPR certified? How many have administered emergency care to another individual? How many are confident in their knowledge of first aid treatments? I know that it's a certain percentage, according to DHS licensing, that has to be certified in the building. But all of my staff are CPR certified, first aid CPR certified. And I discussed in PowerPoint 9 how I had to administer care for a child that was choking at a center, not my current center, some years ago. And the question is, how confident are you? When we are being trained in our CPR and first aid trainings, sometimes it just depends on the instructor. Sometimes they take you pretty fast. It just depends. But it's almost like learning something and putting it on the shelf. Because if you don't keep that refresher, and when it's time or something happens and you really need to administer it, most of the time, you have forgotten what to do. You don't even remember. So I think that's a good thing to always have a refresher for yourself. Like with most of our early childhood classes, most of our courses, PDR courses, they do have refreshers for some courses. And I know for some courses within 3 years, they want you to take the course over because things update, revise it, change. Things are changing constantly every single day. Data is constantly changing. So just like with CPR, instead of waiting 2-3 years to get recertified, make sure you always refresh yourself because you never know when you may have to administer first aid or CPR, and you want to be confident and knowledgeable of what you're doing because you have someone's life in your hands. Chapter objective. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to define the term unintentional injury and explain why the victims are most often young children. Describe the 4 basic principles of risk management. Discuss safety practices that teachers should implement in the classroom and outdoors to safeguard children. Explain the process that programs should follow when developing emergency and disaster response plans. Unintentional injury. An unintentional injury is one that is unexpected and likely preventable. Unintentional injuries are the leading cause of death, disability, and emergency room visits among children under the age of 19. The majority of deaths involve motor vehicles as a passenger and a pedestrian. Drowning and burns are the next leading causes of death among children. Childhood deaths due to unintentional injury. Motor vehicle pedestrian, 362 from 1 to 4 years of age. 5 to 9 years of age, 376. Drowning, 443. Fire, 123. Suffocation, 112. Homicide, firearms, 302. Total deaths for 1 to 4 year olds is 1,380, and for 5 to 9 year olds, 739. That is a lot of unintentional injuries that could have been prevented and avoided. Why do you think young children are at high risk for unintentional injury? Because young children are at high risk for several reasons: their limited understanding of cause and effect, the consequences of their actions, immature motor skills, inexperience, curiosity, acting before they think. I remember when I was a developmental therapist and I would assess children. And I remember one of those questions on the assessment would be, and I would have to ask the parent, do your child acknowledge that something is hot? Can they comprehend that cause and effect? If I touch that stove, it's going to burn my hand. Some children don't know that. They're not trained. They don't teach them if I touch the stove, oh, that's hot. Your reflex, your actions to move back. In what ways do children's developmental characteristics influence the type of injuries they are likely to sustain? What are some of the potential safety risks for infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and school-age children? There's something for you to think about. We're not going to do a group discussion activity, but just for something for you to kind of think about. Risk management principles. Safety management is based on four fundamental principles: planning, established policies and behavior guidelines, active supervision, safety education. Active supervision, that is so important in the classroom, outside the classroom. Active supervision. We shouldn't be turning our back to the children while they're playing. We should have our eyes on the children at all times. You shouldn't just stand in one area the whole time while the kids are playing. You're supposed to go walk around in the centers in the classroom. Active supervision. Safety educate. Educate yourself. Like I said earlier, refreshers. Educate your families. Plan. Make sure you are planning. If an incident happened or accident happened, you are ready to implement that plan. What is your action plan? If somebody fall and bust their nose and blood is everywhere, what is your action plan? Because some people do freak out when they see blood. Some people can't handle the sight of blood. Just like some people can't handle vomit. They begin to vomit. I have a good strong stomach, thank goodness. But some people just freak out. If they see blood, they just whoo, and they done lost every ounce of thinking what was my plan of action, because now you not only got to take care of that person that's over here bleeding, but you might have to take care of the person that's supposed to be helping you, calling 911 or something, because they're going to pass out. They probably going to pass out. So if you already know that they're not capable of handling too much blood, it's best to go ahead and tell that person, you just go ahead and go, I have it, I got it. You just call 911 while I handle this. Planning. Time must be invested in planning, organizing, identifying safety risks, and making adjustments. Ask these questions to yourself. Is the activity age appropriate, development appropriate? Does the activity appeal to children's interests? What potential risks or hazards does this activity present? What special precautions do I need to take to make the activity safe? Just because you think the activity is fun and safe, that doesn't mean it's developmentally appropriate and safe for that child or those children in your classroom. It's always the needs of the children first. Advanced planning. How should I respond if a child misuses the equipment or doesn't follow directions? Oh my goodness. I have seen so many head collisions running and they're not looking. They go before you can say, no, boom, crash. They done bumped heads and on the ground. What would I do in the event that a child is hurt while the activity is in progress? Reevaluate the activity after it has been conducted to determine if changes are necessary to safeguard children's well being. And I know we can't safeguard everything, we can't keep them in a bubble, but you want to do safety, safety, safety is always first. Safety of the child. Establishing policies and behavior guidelines. Guidelines and rules describe the acceptable behavior as it relates to the welfare of an individual child, concern for group safety, and respect for shared property. Rules stated in positive terms and specific to an activity help children to learn appropriate behaviors. Punishment and harsh responses teach children negative ways of responding to rules and fail to teach children acceptable behavior. Rules must be enforced consistently or they lose their purpose in children's respect. A good way of rules being enforced: redirect, redirect, redirect. Show them why you redirect. Gentle hands. Take that child's hand and rub it down that other child's arm or the child that the child just hit, if that makes sense. And I promise you, after you keep redirecting that, eventually you'll hear them say, gentle touches, gentle hands. Or I have seen where they take their hand and they'll go and start telling another child, gentle touches, and show them because you have um, demonstrated positive, acceptable behavior. But being harsh and rude and mean to the child, you're only doing that is promoting negative ways of responding to rules. Active supervision. Teachers have an ethical and legal responsibility to protect children from injury and safeguard their well being. The degree and nature of outdoor supervision is determined by the type of activity, children's developmental abilities, and teachers' supervisory skills. When I worked at the IED program, my supervisor, that was one of the main things. When we would have a staff meeting, we all knew what the number one topic was going to be before he go into any other details or any other topics. The first topic was going to be active supervision. That was the first thing and it was like routine, routine, routine. I don't care how much he said and discussed active supervision. There was always accidents, and there were always somebody not watching their children. So we are just like children under him. He had to keep redirecting. Active supervision, active supervision, active supervision. Teacher checklist, positive strategies for managing children's inappropriate behavior. Acknowledge and give attention for appropriate and desired behavior. Redirect, here we go. Redirect the child's attention to some other activity. Provide the child with the opportunity for choices. You always give them a choice. Always. Oh, goodness. I had one today. She said she was angry because she wanted to play with the baby shark and another student had the shark, which I applauded her after we discussed why was she was angry. I applauded her for even using the vocabulary words, I am angry, because she was not doing that at first. At first, she was just throwing temper tantrums. Now she's actually learning how to use her words to say, I am angry because. So I talked to her. Then I went and found her peer that she hit because she was angry. And I had him talk back to her to tell her how it made him feel when she hit him. And we discussed that. And then I gave her a choice about the baby shark. And so she decided she wanted to wait till he was done playing with the baby shark. And she would go play with the sand instead. And everything was happy go lucky from there. You model the appropriate and desired behavior. Teach and encourage children to use problem solving techniques. Ignore inappropriate behaviors unless doing so is unsafe. Make changes in the environment to discourage inappropriate behavior. Safety education should be ongoing. Take advantage of formal and incidental learning opportunities. Help children to gradually develop self protection skills. Which of these response strategies would not be appropriate to use with a child who has just pushed another child off of their scooter? Guide the child to a different activity. Ignore the child's behavior. Model an appropriate way to request the scooter, or acknowledge the child when they ask for a turn on the scooter. You want to ignore the child's behavior. That would not be appropriate to use with the child. You don't, because most of the time, if you ignore the child's behavior, the child probably is going to get worse. The behavior is going to get worse, more than likely. It's going to get worse. How to select safe toys and equipment. Consider the construction, non toxic, and safety features on your checklist in your book. Avoid toys with small parts, choking hazards, sharp edges, projectiles, loud noises, and long strings or cords from strangulation hazard. Understand that manufacturers' age recommendations are not accurate for all children. Know your children's abilities and limitations. Examples of appropriate toy choices for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. Infants, non breakable mirrors, cloth books, wooden cars, rattles, mobiles, music boxes, plastic telephone, large balls, toys that squeak, soft box, nesting toys, teething ring, washable stuffed animals, push and pull toys. Toddlers, peg bench, large balls, musical recordings, simple puzzles, large building blocks, wood and plastic cars and trucks, dress up clothes, bristle blocks, large beads to string, board books, nesting cups, pool and riding toys, plastic dishes, pots and pans, sand water toys, chunky crayons, paint brushes, chalk and paper, preschoolers, puppets, dolls and dollhouses, dress up clothes, simple art materials, crayons, markers, chalk, watercolors, Play Doh, blunt scissors, books, puzzles, lacing cards, pegboards, simple musical instruments, cars, trucks, fire engines, tricycle, basic construction sets like Lego bricks, Bristol blocks, play dishes, empty food containers, sand water toys, and simple board games. If you are ABC Preschool or Eckers Itters, you probably already have the majority of those toys in your centers. Selecting safe toys and play equipment. Avoid toys and activities that may be too challenging or too far below child skill level. Always check product recalls and safety recommendations. All art materials should be non toxic and not pose a safety risk. Special precautions must be taken to ensure that field trips are safe for children. Thoughtful planning, emergency preparations, and notification procedures. Oh, and let me say this right quick while it's on my mind. Make sure your whatever you have provided in your classroom, make sure you are always having your first aid kit, but band-aids, gloves, um, tape, things like that in your bags for inclement weather, for tornado drills, fire drills, that type of natures. Make sure your bag is always packed and prepared with your emergency phone numbers in your backpack so if you have to call a family member if you have to step out the classroom. Animals in the classroom. Establish feeding and care guidelines. Make sure that no children are allergic to the animals. Always have children and adults wash their hands after handling or feeding any animal. Preparing for emergencies. Develop a response plan. Gather all your emergency supplies, food, first aid, records, play materials. Practice and revise plans. Develop strategies to help children cope during and following an event, and share plans with children and families. You want to always have the children something to play with. I used to work at a center, and they had nothing for their children to play with. If we had to do a fire drill and sit there for more than 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, those children are gonna get bored. They're gonna want to do something. So I went and bought me a backpack of my own, and I loaded that backpack down with all types of little gadgets and gadgets that was safe, safety and appropriate, development appropriate for the children. So they had something to do. If we had to sit there for more than 5 or 10 minutes, because you want to keep their attention. Emergency supply kit, blankets, extra clothing, first aid kit, battery operated radio with extra batteries, flashlight with batteries, hand sanitizer and wipes, toilet paper and plastic bags, small, soap and bleach, unscented, whistle, scissors, water, non-perishable food, manual can opener, paper towels, paper plates, cups, plastic utensils, duct tape, plastic sheeting, disposable gloves, and infant supplies such as diapers, formula bottles, or medication if necessary. For if you have anyone in your classroom that takes medication. What types of emergencies are most likely to occur in your area? We are typically known for tornado drills, ice storms. Back home, tornado drills and ice storms were for me. An approaching tornado triggers the city's warning sirens. What action would you take to protect the children in your classroom? Evacuate the building, shelter in place, implement a lockdown, or send children home? You want to do a shelter in place. You don't want to evacuate the building because the tornado's out there where you trying to go. And you sure don't want to send the children home, because now you are jeopardizing and risking the children's families trying to come and pick up the child, and then have to leave the center to go home, or they might get stuck at the center and can't get home. The failure to practice or perform one's duties according to expected standards is called liability, misdemeanor, negligence, or evidence. Negligence. Toy pieces must be larger than how many inches so they do not pose a choking hazard? 5, 1, well, 0.51, 1.5, or 2. It is 1.5. And that is all for chapter 8. And for safety management, I will get this posted for this week. Thank you.